We're talking batteries and heat, battery box components, inverters, and mobile antenna anti-theft prevention, this time on Mailbag Monday. What's happening, everyone? Thanks for tuning into Ham Radio Tube. My name is Mike K at MRD. If you have an amateur radio-related question for me, shoot me an email. I'd love to hear from you. K8MRD@iCloud.com. We got a lot of cool things to talk about, but first, I would be remiss, and shame on me it's taken this long. I got to say a big thank you. I got something in the mail. Let's see if I can do this without killing myself. Look at this. How freaking dapper am I? Look at it. It's a POTA bow tie. This here comes from Chris, KC4NW. It says, "Hi, Mike. First, I want to say thank you for all you do for ham radio and for your YouTube channel, Ham Radio Tube. I love the content that you put out and the way you present it. It is fun, informative, and enjoyable to watch. Thank you. You're the reason I got into POTA when I came back into ham radio. Thank you." Well, I'll tell you what, Chris, thank you so much. That never gets old, and I am very humbled that even one person has gotten into POTA because of me. So that's awesome. He goes on to say, "I'm sending you this POTA bow tie as a thank you for spreading the word about ham radio and for helping fellow hams. I make bow ties for fun and for wearing to work. Not too long ago, the folks over at the Ham Radio Clubhouse challenged everyone to kick up their POTA game. So that's what I did, making POTA bow ties and giving them out to saying thank you to the hams I enjoy watching on YouTube. I contacted the folks at POTA, told them what I intended to do, and they graciously gave me permission to use their logo. The only caveat was I couldn't make a profit on them. I will not be selling any POTA bow tie, and I'm fine with that. My intent was to kick up my POTA game and to say thank you. So thank you again for your YouTube channel and for all you do for ham radio. I wish you all the best. Enjoy your bow tie and POTA on." Chris, thank you so much. I guaranteed this is going to add 10 to 12 dB for POTA. So, I mean, a POTA bow tie and a Bro Do You Even APRS shirt. I mean, next wedding I go to, I think this is probably it. So that's awesome, man. Thanks for sending that in. So our first question is asking about batteries and heat. This viewer writes, "Mike, I enjoyed your field day rattlesnake video. Thank you. Always find it educational to see how solar, charge controllers, batteries are set up for field operations. I noticed during the tour of your equipment that you had your Big Geek battery box sitting in the hot sun in its black case. I've seen videos about AGM lead-acid batteries being more tolerant of temperature extremes than LiFePO4. Would like to hear your comments about how much you worry about that as a practical matter when it comes to performance and battery life expectancy. Thanks, Lucian KD5LPV." So thanks for writing in, Lucian. The short answer is I don't worry about it at all. I keep my battery in my car almost always. So let's hop over to Bioenno's website and read more about it. So I am using this 30 amp hour lithium iron phosphate Bioenno battery in my Big Geek battery box. And if we click on that and then scroll down here, we're going to see something that probably most people don't read. I know, I'm weird. But it's called a user manual. And if we click on that, right here we can see operating temperature, which is negative 10 degrees Celsius to 60 degrees Celsius. Now, I'm not a very smart man, but I used my iPhone to tell me that 60 degrees Celsius is 140 degrees Fahrenheit. Minus 10 degrees Celsius is colder than I want to be, but it's a little below freezing. So we can operate our batteries within this temperature range without having to worry about it. Charging below freezing is a bad thing, so don't do that because these don't have low temperature charging protection. So I did a little experiment. Today is a really hot day. The highest I saw on my weather station was 98 degrees Fahrenheit, so pretty darn hot, and my car has been sitting out in the sun all day. I put a thermometer inside, and it tells us the temperature, but it also shows a high and a low temperature, and you can see even at a 98-degree day, it is about 10 minutes to 4 o'clock. The sun is pretty much directly overhead. The hottest my car has ever gotten, now I do have tinted windows, keep that in mind, is 122 degrees. So we're still 18 degrees below that 140 degree operating temperature. So I could still use the battery right now. I would be dying inside, but still totally safe to use for the battery. Now, We do have plus 100-degree days pretty much every single day. Last summer was at least highs of 105 degrees, so keep that in mind. It's possible my car might get near that 140-degree temperature, but also keep in mind those are operating temperatures. So turn the air on, open the car up, let the battery cool down for a couple minutes, and you'll probably be okay. But if you are worried the battery's going to get really, really hot during your operation, do something, put it in some shade or something. Try and do what you can to prevent it from getting over 140 degrees. That's kind of extreme, though. So hopefully that answers your question, and thanks so much for writing in. Next, we've got a question about some battery box components. Little TLDR, but I'll get to the point. This viewer writes, my question: where are you getting your other components for battery boxes, specifically the dual USB-C, single USB-A plug that kind of looks like a surprise sad face? Yes, it does. I can find dual A and dual C and a one of each. A bunch of the ones that have voltmeters in them, but I want that triple plug set up, and probably two of them at that. I assume it's an Amazon find, so I'll start digging there, but a link would be helpful if you have one handy. Thanks, Mike. Tell Satan I say pss, 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 pss. Satan. He doesn't care. So would you believe that I have all of the components that I used in one easy-to-find place? So first I want to start off by showing, whenever we say we'll put links in the description, underneath the video, this right here, we call the description. Now you can see it's not very big, but if we click where it says more, we see all kinds of things, and there's all kinds of links that I have here, but this one right here says get one from my Amazon store under battery box stuff. So if we click this link right here, that brings us to my Amazon store, and we can see I've got all kinds of things. And right here, where it says battery box stuff, if we click on that, I've got all kinds of things that I have used for my battery boxes. Right here is that Droke battery meter we just looked at. And these guys right here, these Kewig 2-piece 12-volt USB outlets, are those little surprised sad face outlets, and they work fantastic. They charge your phones really fast. I can charge my MacBook with it, albeit a bit slower, but these are the ones that I am using, these Kewigs. If you're looking for one with a voltmeter, these ones, these UFUNs, I actually put one of these on my ammo box speaker box thing, and these things are freaking sweet. They've got two USB-C PDs, a USB QC 3.0, and this voltmeter is actually surprisingly accurate. For you get two for $25, so you can take a look at those. But I've got all kinds of things. Here's a charge controller that's RF quiet. Here's the switches that I use, crimpers, power poles, RG316 cable. Here's the wire that I use, and make sure you get some Hakko flush cutters. So it's all right there on my Amazon store, up to and including bidets. Next, we've got a question on inverters or RF quiet solar generators. This viewer writes, I've been using solar power as a significant part of my POTA activations for about 18 months. I don't always deploy my 400 watts worth of panels, but I like to exercise my gear. A lot of people tell me that I'm wasting my time as it's only POTA. Well, I disagree. So do I. I see activations as a big part of being prepared. Sherry, K4, SMN, and I live literally in a storm surge zone on the Georgia coast near Savannah. Lately, I've been considering other power options. My current system is built around 12-volt DC, but I'm beginning to see the need for 12-volt AC power. I recall that you recently reviewed an RF quiet DC to AC inverter. If I remember correctly, it was a red 300-watt unit. I could hook a power pole connection from the 3PB Philips POTA power box and run an inverter. I use a Bioenno 30 amp solar controller with 40 amp hours of lithium iron phosphate batteries, two 20 amp hour Miatis. However, I'm thinking that an integrated solution would be better and eliminate potential points of failure. Can you recommend a decent RF quiet solar generator in the 500 watt range? As you know, there's lots of garbage out there that spews a lot of RF all over the spectrum. and or have cheap batteries. Power pole connections would be preferred, but not a deal breaker. I also recall that you recently lost power for at least 24 to 36 hours, so I'd assume this topic is very fresh in your mind. Yes, I did, and I actually lost power yesterday for about an hour or two, so very fresh on my mind. So to answer your question, let's take a look at the Internet Machine. Now, I don't personally have a lot of experience with these solar generators, as I've always built my own, but let's take a look anyway. So first off, Bioenno sells one, exactly what you're asking for, 500 watt-hour renewable power pack. If we embiggen it, you can see it does have a power pole, but that is only for input. You've got two 120-volt connections there, and you've got three, looks to be USB-A and one USB-C. And then you also have like 5 DC outputs. You've got a cigarette lighter, and then you've got 4 barrel connectors. So Bioenno has one. And you also have EcoFlow. Now, I don't own any of these, but I have been around the EcoFlows. Jason has the EcoFlow. So their River series is kind of right in line. Here is a 512 watt hour battery box that they have, whatever you want to call it, solar generator. Now, this one, if we can embiggen it, has 3 USB-As, a USB-C. We've got 420 volt connectors. Looks like we've got a 12 volt socket and 2 12 volt barrel connectors on there. And this might have on top one of those charge your cell phone type things, maybe there with inductance kind of thing there. So those would be the 2 options that I'm aware of. So if you want to go down that route, it looks like you are going to spend $500 to get what you want. Now, let me talk about why I personally wouldn't go down that route. Number one, I like to build my own stuff because I know everything that's in it and I build it exactly the way I want it. My Big Geek battery box has a solar input with a 20 amp Bioenno charge controller, a 30 amp hour Bioenno battery, 3 Anderson power poles for output for powering devices on 20 amp switches. So I can power any of my radios. I can charge all of my devices. We've got the USB-Cs that we looked at earlier. So I have 2 USB-Cs and a USB-A for charging cell phones and tablets and computers and that kind of thing. And in the rare instance that I want 120 volts out of that, this is that little red inverter that he's talking about. This is a Giando 300 watt pure sine wave inverter. It is RF quiet. I did a review video on this a while ago. This lives in my car. This is awesome. I used this all weekend when we were doing the solar eclipse. We were totally off grid, and this was powering a 12-volt fridge. We needed AC for it to get down to 12 volts because we didn't have the right cable. Works fantastic. This is $50. There's also a version of this. I didn't know at the time I bought this, but there's a version that's like $10 more that has USB-C on it, and I would actually go for that because I've converted everything to USB-C. I don't really use USB-A. So to me, it makes more sense to build the battery box that I want and have an external inverter versus spending $500 for a 500 watt solar generator. My issue with those is the 12 volt power that you get out of those. They're usually only rated at about 10 amps. So you're not going to be running 100 watts with your ham radio off of one of those. You know, probably 50 watts would be about the max that you'd want to pull out of that. So they're just not as practical for me. And for that cost, sure, they look nice. They're very well built. They're going to be more compact than probably something you're going to build yourself. But if something goes wrong, how are you going to service it? You're not. So if something goes wrong with my Big Geek battery box, I open it up and there's all the cluster of wires, and I can troubleshoot and fix or replace or do whatever I need to do with it. And on the rare instance that I need 120 volts, you cut off the cigarette lighter plug that comes on here, you put an Anderson power pole on there, and Bob's your uncle, and it's $50. And if something goes wrong with this, you throw it out and you buy another one for $50. So them's my thoughts on that. Now, we've got one more question. This comes from the video I did showing how we put the ATOS on my car. He says, how can you prevent the ATOS from being stolen? Well, that's a pretty easy one. Let me show you.